In 2022, an employee found an AirTag in his luggage after a flight. In 2023, an Indianapolis woman was murdered after her ex-boyfriend used a hidden tracker to find her car. Last year, a Florida woman came home to a stranger in her house. He'd follow her AirTag and had her ex slip it right into her purse. They run for a year on a battery, and right now, today, one of them could be on you. So we're going to talk to you, show you how to find them, give you a step-by-step process of what to do here today on Legitimate Cybersecurity. Thank you so much. My name is Frank Downs, and as always, I'm here with Dr. Dustin Brewer. Dustin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Frank? I love your hoodie. Gotta
Thank you
say.
so much.
Yep.
Hopefully, it's not too nice that I get stalked because of it, because that's what we're talking about today. So, Dustin, you and I have worked in the field of Bluetooth for a while, and Bluetooth, I'd say, since it came on the scene, has given people a lot of capabilities. We now are able to beam music to our car. We're able to share photos when we're close to each other. We're able to do a lot that we weren't able to do in the past. And one of the things that has come onto the market are these tags, these trackers, these specific trackers that are used so that you can find your keys, you can find your remote, you can find stuff that you lose all the time. What do you think of these as they've come onto the stage, and how do you use them in your day to day?
So I am not in the Apple ecosystem, and there's nothing as good as an Apple AirTag.
I'd say I would argue
No, I
there's some
know.
really good options. I for one use Tile, and Tile is something that you can use on Android. I know that Samsung Smart Things also has a Smart Tag as well,
None of
that
them
you
have
can use
quite the
to
same
connect.
network as the AirTag. AirTags, and this is kind of to the point of what we're talking about. Well, I'm sure we'll get into this in a little bit, but yes, and I've used tiles in the past. Those are great for finding your keys, or great for finding your wallet or something like that. I know that's basically what AirTags are too, but there's a little bit more to it with AirTags. And again, we'll get into that in a second. Uh, as far as and I remember when these devices first came on the market, we basically referred to them as a PAN, right? A personal area network. So like this is your network, right? So there's a MAN, which is like a metropolitan area network. There's a LAN, which is a local area network, and then there's a PAN, which is a personal area networks. We'll get into that a little bit more too, but that's basically what, like, I do feel like when I have like a smartwatch on, or I have like earbuds in, or whatever other devices I have that are radiating electromagnetic frequencies and data. Like, that's kind of what I think of it as. It's just like it's just my own kind of personal network.
And
But yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you on that, and I think it's really interesting because these trackers, they don't actually call home. When people feel like they're being tracked or that they have something that's following them, usually the whole idea is, oh, I've been low jacked and it's beaming back to someone. When really that's not the case. These Bluetooth trackers, they don't call home. They're kind of like terrible printers, if anyone understands how printers work, where printers are terrible for a lot of reasons. But primarily, one of the things that they do is they just spew data out all the time saying, I'm here, I'm here, these packets that go out. And these devices do the same thing. Every couple of seconds, they just spew data out. And the thing, we'll use Apple, for example, but Google's Find My Device also does this as well, is everyone who has an iPhone or everyone who has a Google phone in this case, they can pick up all of these frequencies, all of these shouts by these little devices. The little device doesn't know that it's being heard, but all of the devices around it are listening. And as a result, your specific device, these devices are being basically tracked by just screaming, which is a kind of a weird way to put it when we're going to talk
I
about
like
the
that.
ways they're used in the
They're
past.
like it's like the goats on Thor, right?
But it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a message in a bottle where it's passed hand to hand or is out in the ocean, and it has no idea, this message has no idea where it is, but every boat that passes by logs where they saw it. And so your little tiny Bluetooth device is the same kind of thing. It just keeps beaconing, 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 and people can hear it. And what's interesting is they're so small and they're so, I hate to use this word, low tech, right? That you can put in a coin battery, and these things will do this for years in some cases. In fact, the one that I thought was interesting, there is a new capability out where you can take a AirTag, and there's a third party company, which I'm surprised Apple lets this happen, but they'll put in like big, I say big comparatively, double A lithium batteries, and they put the AirTag in the case with those, and it'll make it last for up to a decade in a lot of cases because they're so low in their power usage that they're just
Hmm.
like beaconing, 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 beaconing. So I think it's really interesting. Why I have a question for you that's going to get a little bit more into what we're going to discuss. Why do you think that they are being subverted the way they are? Instead of tracking keys, why are people using them to track people?
For
It sounds
all
so
the reasons that you
terrible.
no, for all the reasons that you mentioned, right? And like we've seen a pretty big market over the past since they've been out for over the past couple of years for like GPS trackers with 4G 5G connection
Right.
and magnets on the back of them, right? So you can stick them underneath the car, you can track anybody, right? This is so much cheaper than those. There's no service fee associated with them, so instead of having to have like a 4G or 5G connection, guess what? You're using the cell phone network. You're using everybody's phone around you in order to report where these things are. So it's low cost, high impact, and they're widely available, and they don't look weird. That's another thing. If you find an AirTag, you're like, "Oh, must be one of my AirTags," or "Oh, somebody lost an AirTag," or whatever it is. It's not going to set off any alarm bells with most people. They're not going to care about that. So, and yeah, I mean, something's low cost, widely available, looks normal. It's going to be a great hacking tool. Let's put it that way. That's just where my mind goes when it comes to like offensive security style, right? Like if you can make something look normal and be cheap, and it does the job and it does it great, then great. Then you've got kind of got the whole thing in a package. But what do
I,
you think?
uh, I think, yeah, I think if you're really going to be nefarious about it, you've got something that can enable it. And I think, there's a lot of people who are unwell out there who I think they're great for a lot of capabilities. I can put one in my old car, right? That can then tell me where it goes if all of a sudden I don't know where I left it, things like that. But the capability for using, I mean, they do come in that convenient package, as you mentioned. And I think there is also going to be a great deal of you know, with ease comes confidence, and whether it's appropriate to have that confidence or not is a whole other ball of wax. But just because something's easy to do doesn't mean you should do it, and doesn't even mean that it's legal either. So, Dustin, when we're talking about the different types of trackers that are available, there's a few that I do want to discuss because they are so popular, and talk about the weaknesses and strengths they have for security. And the one that is most popular is the Apple AirTag. And while everyone's really concerned, because when you think about it, it uses the Apple Find My network, and that is 1.5 billion devices that are always listening to hear
Amazing.
if there's an AirTag nearby. And to be perfectly blunt, it's helped me a lot. When my luggage was sent to Honduras instead of Florida, I was able to see where my luggage was in the Honduras airport the entire time. Not that it brought my luggage back quicker, but I was at least able to coordinate better with the airline to tell it where it exactly went. The strength for abusers here is that these tags specifically are often on sale because they're only 29 bucks. So they're one of the cheapest and they're the easiest to buy because Apple's everywhere.
Hmm.
And as far as capabilities, it has the smallest network of detection alerts on Android. Now, I will also say though, they have taken Android into consideration because they have the best built-in safety features that I've seen so far. Where if there is one near you, so if there's one that's been planted on you, or is maybe say in your car or near you, it plays a sound after 8 to 24 hours of being separated from the owner and sends alerts to nearby iPhones as well.
Yeah.
That said, there have been examples in the past where people have been able to subvert that so that it can't make the sound. I will say to Apple's credit, they continually take action to try and improve it so that becomes harder. Also, there's one tip for you to know, for all of our listeners and viewers to know, is that they all have NFC capabilities as well in them. So if you do find one, so if you hear that sound and you do find the AirTag and you do find it and you hold it up to your phone, as long as your phone has near field capabilities, NFC, which most phones do these days, it will surface the owner's serial number and a partial phone number as far as who that device belongs to. So if you find one and you pull it up and you place it next to your phone and you see your ex's phone number, you know that maybe, just maybe, you might be stalked at this point. Now, that said, you can probably register them in different ways and so forth. But as all the different capabilities that I've seen, Apple seems to be taking the most proactive stance to inform people when they're being followed, when there is an AirTag near them that maybe shouldn't be. So it's nice, but they're not the only option that's available out there. There's also Tile, and I did like Tile before. Tile's been
Yeah.
around for longer than AirTag.
Yep.
And they also have the same price point as AirTag. You can get them between 25 and 35 bucks. And there's the whole Tile network. And this is a bit more interesting because unlike, say, we've got the Google Find My Device network or the Apple AirPlay or Apple Find My network, Tile has its own separate network. And in order for you to be able to attach a tile and find where something is, all the other people who that would have to be part of that network to find your device. So someone has to actively download Tile and have it on their phone in order to inform you if your tile is near them. And that makes this a lot more. I mean, we're talking a huge, huge decrease in the capability at this point because if it is not native to the device, like you see with Google or you see with Apple, and I mean, you have to take intention into consideration. You have to and there's going to be just less people in general.
Hmm.
One of the strengths for the abusers is there's the anti-theft mode, which will hide the tracker from Tiles apps,
Hmm.
scan and secure detection feature, which they have. The owner will have to pay $5 a month for this. But as far as a weakness goes, again, that Tile app has to be installed on other phones, meaning that like it's going to be hard for someone to necessarily say stalk you or track you, which sounds really creepy when I say it that way. It's going to be harder for them to do
That's
it
what
with
we're
the
talking
Tile.
about today. It's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. And then there's two more that I want to talk about. And one is Samsung's Galaxy Smart Tag and the Smart Tag 2. This is about $30 and it uses Samsung's Find network, which is interesting because a lot of Samsung's smart home devices, they bought smart things a long time ago, have the capability to work with these. So then it is no longer just phones that these devices can speak to, right? And provide real-time information. It can be, say, part of the Smart Things network, part of Samsung's light bulbs, or part of Samsung's, yeah, I've got a smart home, Smart Things device right there, or any of their sensors. They can be used to help triangulate where the individual is. I mean, as far as the strength goes, they blend in a bit more, and most viewers don't think to scan for smart tags, these types of smart tags, the way they look. But it is even more difficult for an abuser to use them because they need the Smart Things app. And I can't tell you, outside of you, I don't know anyone else who's ever tried Smart Things or has the app. So that one, while it is unique in that your dryer or fridge can help triangulate you and figure out where you are, right? There's nothing, no real benefit there. And then finally, there's Chipotle and other Find My compatible ones. So Apple opened up the Find My network capability and the use of it to third parties who can build their own kind of AirTags. Result is organization companies like Chipotle have built ones, and they kind of have their own niche because they like to build them in different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And so, for example, they have ones that are like thin that they can put into a wallet, and
Hmm.
so that's there. It's interesting because counterfeit and modded AirTags exist on eBay and AliExpress. I'm not saying this is that type of it, but these third party ones open up the capability to do a lot more. And what's really important to remember with whether it's Chipotle or any of these tags that supposedly notify you, you can even go on AliExpress or you can go on eBay and purchase these devices that'll work on the Find My network with the speakers drilled out. It's a real loophole that while Apple is proactively trying to address it, you can still be tracked and never know it because there's no sound there. And that's the part that I think is really interesting. And you've done a lot of research into ethics and technology and ethics. Where do you feel this fits in the scheme of things? I mean, when you have something, I almost feel this is like kind of the how do I say this without maybe us getting canceled? I'll say it this way: it's kind of similar to the gun debate, right? Where everyone could say, "Oh, well, if there's less guns, there's less crime." Where then there's the other side of the argument of it's not the gun that kills people; it's the people that kill people, right? You know, should there be a type of regulation on things like this? What is the ethical considerations? What do you think when you're hearing that you can even go on Alibaba and buy versions of these with the safeties off?
Yeah, this has always been kind of a point, like, we're all waiting for the nanobots to come, right? And the truth is that they're kind of here already. They're just not nano. They're only, uh, micro maybe at this point, or maybe not even micro, just above that. And they're in IoT devices. They're in the devices that we're talking about today, and we talked about last week as well. But um, so these I have a feeling like once they get even smaller, then all of a sudden there's going to be concern, right? I don't know why that is. I don't know why it's like it is almost like this thing in our head where we're like, well, we can still see these things. But what if they were like so small that you couldn't see them, or maybe just slightly smaller so that it was something that you could, get someone to swallow with their food. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. I'm not saying that that's happening or anything like that, although it might be. I don't know. On the ethics side of this, so this is the ethics debate, right? And at least in our area of the world, Frank, it doesn't come up unless it's costing extreme losses in human life or extreme losses in money. And then all of a sudden there's a regulation put around something, right?
One would even say it's not even the first one; it's more the second one.
Right. DuPont, Monsanto, we've seen this over and over again with, large corporations in the United States where they get away with, I'm not going to say murder, but they get away with putting poison in places and pushing out the middleman, right? So that's on the ethics side, right? Is you and I sitting here today, sitting here like saying like, yeah, no, that should not be allowed. Even Apple is saying it shouldn't be allowed. But there are ways around it, right? And there's always going to be that kind of innovation too to think about. So if somebody really wants to make something do something that it's not supposed to do, an electronic device in general, that's kind of what we do in the offensive security side, right? Is we take a device that we make it, we pull it dragging and screaming into some other function that it shouldn't be able to do in order to exploit and then move on laterally or eventually get the keys of the kingdom of the network, right? So we're going to see the same thing. That was a bad choice of analogy, by the way. I shouldn't have said
Yeah,
and screaming. But anyway,
well, we kept going. It's all right. We made it to the end.
yeah, let's keep going. Let's just power through that one. It's always going to be kind of a security researcher's job to find the ways to utilize these devices for nefarious purposes, so that we know how the bad guys are going to do it. We always assume that if we figure out, a vulnerability or an exploit or something like that, that the bad guys have already had it for weeks or months or days or years or whatever it is, right? Um, and so this is no different. So on the ethics side of the house for security researchers, of course, I want that capability to still be there to be able to do this kind of stuff. On the bad guys side, or on the regulatory side, yeah, no, there should be some kind of regulation against this, and it would be great to have it in like an overarching privacy federal regulation that protects the United States citizens' privacy. GDPR, I don't know if there's anything specifically in GDPR that's like you can't do this, or there's got to be a way to opt out. Maybe that's the most important part. But opting out of networks like this makes it completely unusable. Like if you opt out, there's really no point other than it could still alert you if you're away for 24 hours, or if your phone's still in the vicinity, you can still see it. So, but yeah, that's the best I can go. Like me personally, ethically, yeah, there probably should be some kind of regulation around these things, around these capabilities. At the same time, we're still walking around with big version of that, right? We're still walking around with magic internet brick with GPS capabilities, internet connectivity capabilities. There's a new version of spyware called stalkware, like stalkerware. So it's just for people to be able to stalk you. Like you don't even have to have an extra device. They just install something on your phone and then they connect it back to their account and then they can track you and listen to you and read your text messages and everything.
And on a side note, I agree because you brought that up. I want to discuss that a little bit more. When we're talking about, I got two things that came up this week that kind of really frustrated me. Yet again, I was considering that there's huge tariffs and embargoes now that make it basically illegal to have any kind of vehicle made, electric vehicle from China bought in the U.S. I disagree with this for a lot of different reasons, mostly because I think the intent is disingenuous. Because one of the reasons that we're being told that we can't have cool electric cars at low prices made in China is that, well, they could spy on you with them. And then so I sit and I wonder, where's my phone made? Right? Where's my phone made? My phone is made in China. A lot of people's phones are made in China. So the argument that you can't have these electric cars because they're made in China, because China might spy on you, I think is disingenuous and false and just easy pickings for people to come up with a reason for it, i.e. special interest groups like GM and the like. But and then separately from that, if everyone's concerned about the spying, well, there is legislation that came out in the I think it was 2021 bill for the infrastructure improvement that says I think it's by 2030, all new vehicles made have to have capabilities built into them to detect if a driver is impaired. Now, I am all for people not drinking and driving, right?
Hmm.
They should not do that. And they should not, pose a danger to other people. But there are also instances where people can maybe seem impaired but are not impaired, for example, and we're going to have to trust some dweeb out at Ford or GM to determine the appropriate ways in which we might be able to drive our own cars that we bought. It's a bit much for me in this regard. I don't need other companies determining whether I'm fit to drive or not. As someone who has successfully driven this far in life.
For
So
the most part,
go
too.
ahead. No, continue.
No, I was saying drunk. Like I was just making a joke. I was saying you've driven this far in life, and I said you were drunk most of the time too. So that's
Waka
a
waka 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 waka.
yeah, that's a joke.
But
Um,
what's interesting? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
nope. I was gonna say I completely agree. Like it's there's a line there, right? And we're already seeing it with like Meta glasses, where Meta workers are like, we can see naked people, and we don't necessarily want to see that, right? And totally fair.
Only
Like,
specific nudity, please.
right? Yeah, exactly. Right. Only nudity. Yeah, and I mean that's consent. But so there's that, and then there's yeah the monitoring of cars. Now I actually have both of my vehicles are vehicles that have monitoring capabilities of the driver, because they both have automated driving capabilities. And so for that, totally get it. Um, and it's something I consented to. Something I knew about before I bought the vehicle. I bought the vehicle. It's fine. It does technically go to a private industry. It doesn't go to like the government or anything like that. But it's still it's still something that's there, and I think about a lot while I'm driving, especially when it's yelling at me for not looking at the road when I am clearly looking at the road. I get yelled at a lot for not looking at the road by my vehicle when I'm driving, even though I am looking straight at the road.
And
Sometimes it's because I have sunglasses on.
and
Anyway,
that's frustrating. Yeah, but that's
yeah,
frustrating, right? You
yeah,
can't wear sunglasses where the sun, if you drive, and the sun hits just the right way, it can blind you, and that's a bigger problem.
right,
So
exactly.
it's
Anyway,
very
but
frustrating the level of surveillance that we don't have control over anymore. But I also want to talk about the things that can be a bit concerning because while it is concerning that this monitoring is happening, there are some like legitimate dire consequences. And there are a few that stood out to me. Specifically, Heidi Moon in Akron, Ohio, back in January of 2020. She was a 43-year-old mother who hired a private investigator because, get this, her ex boyfriend kept texting her with details about where she was and asking her why she was there and what she was doing. The investigator swept the car and found an Apple AirTag in the back pocket of the front passenger seat. 4 hours later, after it was found, her ex boyfriend shot and killed her at a hotel in Ohio before turning the gun on himself. Her family, everyone realized that this was horrifying and started a federal class action lawsuit against Apple in December of 2022 because of this. So it almost gets to your point that like if enough people are injured or something, then they'll take action. But then at the same time, you can still get these Find My AirTags, right? So I guess is it because it didn't cost enough? Or is it because it's cheaper to fight a lawsuit? How much are being made off the sale of these? I don't know, but it is resulting in people dying. Another one is attackers, in this case, robbers, are using it to track people for home invasions. In 2023, armed suspects used an AirTag to track a couple back to their home in Florida and ambushed them at gunpoint in their driveway, Dustin.
mhm.
They ambushed them and started robbing them there, all because they put an AirTag into their vehicle. It is crazy. So whether it's the demented exes who have problems or whether it's bandits, we call them
Criminal
robbers,
element.
banditry,
Yeah.
the baddies, right? These devices are being subverted to be used and tracked. And it's almost like now people can take into their hands a level of tracking that only corporations had up until this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I
what's that mean?
yeah. First of all, I am all for bringing back the term bandits. I like that.
You are. There you
Yeah.
go.
If I'm not gonna get mugged, I'm gonna get
Bandited?
attacked by
Bandai?
bandits. Yeah, by bandai. I'm gonna be bandized. Oh man. Um, yeah, exactly. Like things keep getting smaller, cheaper, easier to implement, easier to use. You know, but not only that, but we still have the initial vectors of people being able to track us. We still have, and to your point, yeah, okay, that's going to take a little bit more effort on somebody's part, but it still is. It's as easy as just throwing a tiny little device, low powered device, into the back of a car. It's also just as convoluted or complicated as setting up a network to fool you into logging into it and then tracking you that way or coming up with a pattern of life with you that way. Um, Things sure have changed since my last well, I guess not my last one, but some of my earlier penetration tests were like we would do, we would look at executives and we would follow them back to their houses and monitor, Wi-Fi signals and Bluetooth signals coming out of.
Normally, like part of work.
Right. Yeah. Yes. 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 Approved ways of doing this. Right. Where they agreed to it. There was a rules of engagement. They were like, "Yep, you can go ahead and follow me home, and tell me where I'm susceptible to cyber attacks." Right. Um, and part of that was building a pattern of life on somebody. So we've come a long way from having to do something like that. Where nowadays I could just throw an AirTag in someone's, you know, in someone's. I would still have to technically go to their house to like do like a Wi-Fi survey or Bluetooth survey and see what kind of other devices they had to be able to electronically profile them that way. But it's something that we've done. It's something that we've done in the past. And
Yeah, do you remember that one time I forgot, and this was over a decade ago, I left an iPad on top of a car and drove down the highway?
yes,
Yeah, and it flew off. The very first iteration of the Find My network helped me get to a certain, like, it was the middle of nowhere too. Get to like
yeah,
a 3 mile radius, and then I drove up and down the highway with a bunch of antennas, just scanning for this device,
for the
trying to
Wi-Fi.
identify based off the
Yeah.
signals that it was blasting, and I found it. So in all fairness, there's an example of positive use. Um,
Yes.
I want you to talk a little bit about the device that you have on your desk behind you, because this is one of the ways in which you can identify if something's being used to track you, and it's on top of
The
your
Game
amazing
Boy.
plaque. Yes, no, yes, especially the Lego Game Boy.
The Flipper. Yeah. So the Flipper has the capability. I mean, this is a little mini hacking device, you can call it. On the top here, there's some input output port pins that you can use. There's an infrared transmitter receiver on it. Internally here, there are NFC card readers and other radio wave frequency, capabilities. There are attachments for this to make it. There's a Bluetooth capability on the inside. There's attachments for Wi-Fi, and you can literally preload it with scripts in order to do everything that we just talked about and more, right? So you can clone somebody's NFC card. So if that's how you get into your office or that's how you get into your apartment, this can clone it, and then be used for entry. It still is pretty near field, but there are attachments and there are other things you can build in order to have kind of far away capabilities to be able to scan NFC cards and be able to clone those, right? It can build a profile on somebody based off of their Wi-Fi and Bluetooth footprint. It can actually, most of those things are randomized now. The MAC addresses and any kind of identifiable information that's being sent out is somewhat being mitigated by Apple and Google, or by Google and Apple and Google right now with like randomization capabilities. This can still circumvent those by looking at what else is around you and looking at your patterns of life and looking at all kinds of other things that are happening. All of this in this little package, charge it, it lasts for days, and it costs, I think, under $200.
I
So
think
it's
it's like
cheap.
around 200 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's cheap comparatively speaking. And all that can, and not to mention the support. So there's a huge user support group out there who are making utilities in order to do these things, not for nefarious purposes, for legitimate penetration testing to be able to help people to become more secure.
Again, maybe for both. Yeah.
Maybe for
Yeah.
both.
So
It
don't be
depends.
worried if your toxic ex-boyfriend has some AirTags, but be real concerned if he's got a flipper like Dustin just
Yeah.
showed you.
If he's got that, then, or he or she have that, then it's, oh, let's be honest, it's he. If, if he has that, then there's going to be then there's probably then that person probably has a level of acumen for technology that it is going to be
You
real
should take
hard.
note of.
Yes, real hard for you to kind of get around. And that's, it's an interesting part of our job, and we've brought this up in the past, Frank, where there is this ethics part of our job where we do have the knowledge and capabilities to be able to do a lot of nefarious shit if we wanted to, right? We don't because we're good people, I guess, or we're just I think we're just normal people who don't want to harm anybody, and that for the most part that's how people are. Um, but there always is that kind of like that thought process. I think when somebody meets you, for the first time, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but and you're like, oh, I'm in cybersecurity. They're like, oh, okay. Like they kind of view you. You're like, oh, you're a hacker, and it's like, well, no, or maybe I don't know. Sometimes it depends on the day, right? But I don't know how does that how does do you think people perceive you differently when you tell them like what you do when you meet them the first time? Like,
I
is there
think definitely half my neighborhood is a little uncomfortable around me. They they definitely are. Um, I when you tell people the type of work you do, I don't know if you're like me. I try to kind of bury the lead a lot, and where people are like, "Oh, where do you work?" "Oh, I'm in cybersecurity, and I do cyber. I help companies become more hardened, more ready, protect them from incidents and stuff like that." They're like, "Oh, so you like good with tech?" "Yeah, yeah." Well, you'll see them think for a bit. They're like, "Wait, but do you know how to hack?" I mean, yes, but legally know how to hack. And all of a sudden, they're just like, mm.
yeah,
But guess who they call when they can't get in their Facebook account? So me. And also, half the time I can't help them anyway. So because
right,
that was, I'm like,
exactly.
I'm not doing anything illegal to help you with that. I promise.
That's the thing is, like, it's interesting when you meet somebody and they say they're a locksmith or, and, like, something like that, you're not like, "So you can break into my house?" But for some reason with cybersecurity, there's something about it, and I don't know, maybe it's because I don't know. I
Especially when you're like a penetration tester or you have penetration testing experience like you or I do, where they're like, "Oh, so have you hacked anything?" It's like, "Yeah." I mean, legally. And then they're like, "Hmm, oh." And part of me wonders if there's just like this technical mysticism to it because, like you and I have said a lot of people don't necessarily understand how technology works necessarily, but they trust it to work. And so, whenever there's anyone who can kind of dissect it and take it apart and even say subvert it to make it do things that no one thought it could do, there's a level of leeriness that kind of comes along with that. And
Yeah,
I think that's one of the reasons I like doing this show with you to help people understand that cybersecurity is not
yeah,
magic. I mean,
no.
you are welcome to call us wizards, but we're not.
Honestly, for the most part, with the exception of AI, and gremlins and bugs, it is probably the most, like, simple, truly binary scientific, capability we have as humans. It's either a 1 or a 0, folks. That's it, you know? With AI, there's been a new introduction of like, we don't know why the computer or why the program is reacting this way, but we've always had those. We called them gremlins like a really long time ago. Bugs is something that they're also known as. Sometimes people call them features, depending, right? And it's almost like AI for AI to act a certain way, even though we don't understand why. They kind of do. They're like, no, this is a new feature. Look at how innovative it's being, and look at how it's like. But you didn't program it to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but to your point, yeah, it's a 1 or a 0. It is here's what's going on, and here we know why it's going on, and we're going to fix it. And that's most of computing sciences, I think, including
And
cyber.
talking about fixing it, the one thing I want to make sure we discuss before we end the show today is how to fix things if you think you're being tracked. And I want to start first with the Apple situation. While you may not get a sound because someone's drilled a hole into the actual device to make sure the speaker doesn't work, if you have an iPhone on you, you will still be notified if there's a tag near you that is not yours after like I think 8 to 12, 24 hours. It'll ping and it'll say, hey, there's something near you. You need to look for it. Additionally, if you're not an Apple user, because again, Apple AirTags, I think, are the biggest concern here because of the ubiquity of them. You, as an Android phone owner, can download a specific app made by Apple in order to scan for nearby devices that are not yours. They'll tell you where they are and they'll identify them for you. And a lot of the other a lot of the other companies we've discussed here have a similar capability because at the end of the day, there's no profit in stalking for these companies. I mean, maybe there's profit in robbery for the robbers, but there's rarely any good profit for anyone. It's important to know what your options are. When you do get that notification, there's a few things that you can also do. You want to do a physical sweep of your vehicle first and foremost, to because 90% of the time they're going to want to put it in your car somewhere. Check places like the OBD port that is down by your when you're sitting at your wheel. It's down off to the left side usually, and it's the port that's used by mechanics and uncles all around world, right, to scan your car to figure out why that light is coming on in your dash, right? It's where the main computer is to actually provide information. Also, check the spare tire area, check the gas cap door. That's where a lot of people put them. Also, front bumpers. There are ones that they can attach magnetic connections to. Check
Mhm.
your wheel wells for those. Basically, give a good thorough scanning of your vehicle. And also, if you're not worried about finding it, you can always just go into a car wash and maybe it'll scrub it off and see if that works too. But odds are it might even be inside your car, and that's not going to fix it very well. Once you do find it, though, the important thing is don't throw it out. Contact the authorities, contact the cops, and find out what's going on, why it's there. In a lot of cases, cops, if it's serious enough, can actually put in requests to Apple to find out more details about the device, who owned it, where it came from, and so forth, to give you a better understanding if you are in a serious, dangerous relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a behavioral aspect to this too, and I'm kind of hesitant to bring this up just because when when you are in a relationship with somebody, or or really close with somebody, you start thinking the same thoughts, sometimes speaking the same way. There's just this finishing each other's sandwiches. There's just like there's certain things
I love that Frozen reference.
that, yeah, Frozen and Community, Frank. Um, so I know they made the same joke in both those things. I think Community did it first. I'll have to go back and double check on that. But anyway,
Tell us in the comments, those
yeah.
fans that may know off the top of their
Is
head.
it Frozen or Community? I wanna get this let's get this war going here. Um, so, with that being said and that in mind, you know, if somebody has knowledge of places you've been where you didn't tell them where you were, if they have knowledge of phrases you've used and they weren't around when you spoke those phrases or said those things, that's another behavioral thing to kinda start picking up on as well. So if someone's like, "Oh, you texted blah, blah, blah the other day and said this," and you're like, "I never told you that." That's another key, right? Because there's going to be so much information coming into some of these folks that they're going to mix up what they read off of your app or tracking app or where you were versus what you two have actually talked about. So just one more kind of like, again, this is I don't want everybody getting paranoid about their partners, because again, as we spend more time with each other, we start thinking like each other, and we really do start kind of using the same verbiage. And like there might be a time where you're like, oh, I talked to my sister yesterday. And you're like, oh, yeah, you told me that. And it's like, no, I didn't. That doesn't mean any of this. It might just mean that you talk to your sister on, the second Tuesday of every month, every single month. Right. So just keep that in mind. But if there are certain phrases and there are other red flags, those are some red flags to kind of pay attention to as
And one more thing, I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up, but it's super sketchy. It sounds super uncomfortable. But as
well. Let's
we've
do it.
talked about you throughout this whole episode, the thing to remember is it's not just tags. It's not just smart tags that can track you. It's anything that emits a Bluetooth signal.
Yeah.
And that's last week or a few weeks ago, we talked about eye polish and their new fingernails with the e-ink that you can place on it. Regrettably, a lot of these smart products that you're starting to see are designed specifically for women. And I'm thinking of two examples. There are now things on the market called smart bras. And there's EM Glare is one of them, and the other is Sensoria. And both of these devices, like Dustin and I have discussed, were built specifically in order to ensure that key data for individuals is sent to them. They track things such as heartbeat. Some of them are even trying to get to the point where they can do basic warnings for potential indicators of breast cancer. All of this information is being transmitted via Bluetooth to the individual's phone. And even if you secure it, even if you're trying to make sure that, that data is encrypted, the attackers, the trackers, they don't care about the encryption of the data. They care about the signals that are coming off and the IDs that are affiliated with it. And as scary as it sounds, you can be tracked by your bra now if you're wearing one of these devices. So you want to make sure that if you do use them, you're, only with people that you trust and things like that. But just, we're not saying that you shouldn't use these devices. Just be aware of these are the types of risks that you take when you get that's any type of smart clothes that's coming up now that is out. They will beacon information out. So, as you move forward, if you take anything away from this episode, we really want you to be able to know when you buy a smart device or anything that has Bluetooth in it, the risks that you're taking. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't shove your head in the sand and not use any of these devices, but use them smartly, use them carefully, and be aware of the way they can be subverted and used against you. But the last thing I want is my underwear to be telling baddies where I am, right? Or toxic people. On that note, before we end today's show, I think it's really important that we have a few resources too. If you think that you are in a relationship where there could be domestic violence or if there's stalking or so forth, know your options. There's the National Domestic Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. The Coalition Against Stalkerware at stopstalkerware.org.
There it
Huge
is.
fan of them.
Yep.
And also the Operation Safe Escape. If you feel you're in a difficult position, safeescape.org will help get you to safety.
Yep, absolutely. And just kind of go over, or just to kind of touch on what Frank, mentioned here. I hope it didn't feel like, we're mansplaining anything, or, going
Oh,
into that
Jesus, I
level.
hope you're not.
Yeah, no, well, but unfortunately, domestic abusers, it is overwhelmingly men attacking women, overwhelmingly. It's not even, not even close. So yeah, so we are speaking to a very particular demographic here, but the only reason is because statistically, those are the survivors slash victims of these attacks and crimes. So everybody stay safe out there.
And please reach out to those organizations because
Yeah,
we can't really help you. Just as a side note, we get some interesting fan mail.
we do. Yeah.
Please seek out the organizations that we've referenced already.
Yep. Those are
Anyway,
professionals in in their areas. We're just cybersecurity folks.
yeah, we're just two dudes trying to make people more comfortable with cyber, believe it or
That's
not.
right.
We're trying to
Yep.
demystify cyber from time to time. Anyway, until then, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending your time with us. We know you could have been doing so many other things, and we hope you thought it was time well spent. Until then, Dustin, take us out.
Keep on cybering.